Do you feel like you're saving as much money as possible and it's still just not enough? Well, let's look at the income side of your budget. I'm Nathan with Askesis Mindset. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel as we have a ton of free resources to help you on your journey to financial freedom. In this video, we'll go over the Income Investigator, which will uncover ways that you can make, thus save, even more money. In the video description below, you'll find a link to our free Google Sheet. Let's get started.
Thank you again for investing in your financial future and joining us. You should be coming to us from the second part of the Minimalist Budget Builder, which was the Spending Investigator. This video is specifically focusing on income. So once you've reduced your expenses as much as possible, so our goal with the Askesis mindset is to get to our expenses being less than 25% of our overall income. And that might sound extreme, but the reality is a lot of people miss the income side of that equation. So, yes, you can get your expenses as low as possible to a certain point, but there is going to be a floor there where you just can't cut anything else. Let's say you live as minimally as possible. You follow everything that I did. You do everything to the max. There becomes a point where you can't save any more money. So the only way to get ahead at that point is to focus on the income side. So in the video description below, you have the link to the Google Sheet. However, if you have not watched the Spending Investigator video, I would highly suggest that you start there, and you should just be completing the third tab instead of starting from scratch. So if you've ended up here, great. I'm so glad to have you. I hope you subscribe to our channel. But we are on part 2, which is the Income Investigator. So if you scroll down here to the tab on the left, it will bring up this portion of the Minimalist Budget Builder. Real quick, I'm going to go through how to fill this out. You're going to pause the video. You're going to take the time to fill it out, and then we'll reconvene for an example and just get you thinking about how you can make more income. So there's 4 columns here that you have to fill out. The first is the income source. So where is that money coming from specifically? How much do you get paid per month? So along with the Spending Investigator and this Investigator, we are using per month figures only. How many hours did you work in that month? And then it is going to auto calculate the income per hour. So you don't have to touch that at all. And then finally, just go ahead and categorize your income. So you have full-time, part-time, W-2, 1099 gig work, maybe you're working for cash. If it's some sort of digital, and then you can also have passive income, a support program, and you could have a second full-time job, which we will talk about a little later. I only want you to focus on income that you've made in the last 30 days or is readily available to you. I really don't care about the part-time job that you had 3 months ago. If it is not actively providing you income right now, it doesn't need to be on here. Okay? We only need the things that are actively providing you with income right now. So go ahead and pause the video. You can take as much time as you need to fill this out. We'll reconvene, and then we'll look at an example together. All right, so you have your entire Income Investigator filled out. What I'm going to ask you to do is just not focus on your specific sheet. Take a look at the example, and then you can apply some of these things to your own life and determine where are the opportunities to make more income. And before we get started, I'll just say I understand wholeheartedly the stress, anxiety, and discomfort income plays in our life. I know some of you are working jobs that you might not particularly like. You're making less money than you know that you're worth just because that you have safety. I'm not here to tell you that what you're doing is wrong. I'm just simply challenging your thinking. I worked many jobs for many, many years that provided me with a steady paycheck and safety over challenging myself and getting out there and figuring out how much money I could actually make. I fully understand the internal battle that will occur from leaving a job that covers all of your expenses, that provides you with safety and security, and trying to get more for yourself. So we're just going to go over some ideas. The Askesis mindset, this is where you can follow our website and our social channels. We really dive into, especially on the website, there's a whole page dedicated to making additional money. Okay. In this example here, we basically have a public school teacher. So they work for the Miami-Dade Public Schools. They have a part-time job. They have some digital income, and then they have one side hustle that they work for cash. So they make $3,250 a month. For that, they had to work 173 hours, which works out to $18.79 an hour. And you might be saying, well, I thought teachers made $35 an hour, blah, blah, blah. I want you to put your actual number of hours worked. If you're taking work home, if you're answering calls after hours, even your drive time, okay, if it takes you an hour to drive to work and an hour to drive home, you need to add those 2 hours every single day. That is productive time that you are losing to that job. Whether you're compensated for those hours or not is irrelevant, but it is time coming out of your life. And that's how we're going to use the income per hour. These income amounts should also be after taxes. We don't need any before tax figures. Why would we include income that is just going to get paid to somebody else? So these are after tax numbers. Texas Roadhouse, this person has a part-time job. Last month they worked 54 hours. They made $1,350. Worked out to $25 an hour was their, again, take-home pay. We take out taxes. Tutoring, they made $500 a month last month. They worked 10 hours. It was $50 an hour, and they got paid that in cash. And finally, this person had a teachers pay teachers account. They made $75 off of 8 hours of work, worked out to $9.38 an hour. So why do we put the income per hour? Well, it is a unbiased way to look at where are you being most productive. This is where I challenge a lot of people and where I had to challenge myself, because so often we focus on dollars per hour. That is the carrot that keeps us enslaved to our job. Oh, I got $1 an hour raise. I got my merit pay. Blah blah blah. Okay, it is a little token to keep you feeling like you're making progress at a place where you're probably going nowhere fast. And sorry to be harsh, but the income side of the equation is where a lot of people miss out on genuine opportunities for themselves. So if I was working with this person as a client, I would focus right in on that tutoring section and saying, well, you're making $50 an hour in cash. You're only working 10 hours a month. Why are you working at Texas Roadhouse, and why are you doing the teachers pay teachers? Because it seems that you could work a lot less hours and make the same amount of money. So number one, you could increase your work-life balance. Or number two, you could work the same amount of hours and make significantly more than you're making by how you're using your time. And this would lead into the discussion of, well, I only have one client that I tutor. They pay me really well. Okay, well, how can we get more of those? Could you take 5 hours a month to try to market yourself and find another one of those clients? Because that would be time very well spent if you could focus on making $50 an hour instead of 9. Hopefully that's clicking. So what we're really trying to do here is extend your income. Your income is unlimited. The other thing that I want you to think about, if you work in retail or hospitality, a lot of time, I mean, these are some of the hardest working people that I know outside of construction laborers. You know, people that are waiters and work in restaurants work their tail off. However, you know, as this person here, Texas Roadhouse, $25 an hour, it's not a, you're not going to get rich doing that. However, if that is your full-time job, it might be possible, and again, this is something I want you to start thinking about, to have 2 full-time jobs. A lot of times we're like, okay, I'm going to have 1 full-time job and 3 side hustles. Okay, well, why don't you just go for 2 full-time jobs? Do the hours in the day line up? And the reason I say retail and hospitality is because sometimes those hours allow you to do both. Okay. For example, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, when's their busiest time? The morning. So you could work a morning shift. You start at 4 or 5 a.m. whenever they open, and you work until 1 p.m., every day. And then, from 4 p.m. to midnight, 1 a.m., you have a different job. And you might be asking, well, when am I supposed to sleep? Okay. We don't acknowledge excuses. So it's simply a thought to put into your head of what is possible. How can you adjust your time? Obviously, you still need to sleep. You need to have some sort of work-life balance. You need at least a day off a week, at least, right? Just to take care of yourself and have a break. However, maybe you have enough time in the week to fit in 2 full-time jobs. If you don't, if that schedule doesn't match up for you, where are the opportunities that exist for you in making as much money per hour as possible? And this is where I'll challenge you to work for yourself and not someone else. I coach so many people that have a fixated mindset on working for somebody else. I don't know if it's a fear or a lack of belief or where this notion people have that they cannot work for themselves comes from, but it is ingrained in so much of society that we are looking to others for validation instead of finding that validation in ourselves. So what do I mean by that? Well, some of you live in urban areas or suburban areas that you have neighbors that need their grass mowed. Somebody's coming to do it. If you can provide a service to your neighborhood or within, let's say, a mile of your home, that is highly valuable because you eliminate drive time. It's something that you can easily do. You're already home, and then boom, you can be there in a split second. So if your neighbor's paying $150 a month for their lawn care, well, why couldn't you do that? Maybe it takes you, 5 hours a month to do their lawn. Okay. Do the math on that. That's a pretty good amount of income per hour. Yes, you're going to have expenses such as gas, equipment, whatnot. But then you add a second account and a third account. And the limit only really becomes your time. And on a job like that, so let's say you work a full-time job 5 days a week, you have 2 days a week off. Okay, well, every Saturday morning you could get up and put in 7 or 8 hours to get your accounts done, and then that's it. Or maybe you want the weekend off, so every day you go and do one account after work, you still have your 2 days off. Time management is an essential piece of your budget. Okay. If you are just sitting there mindlessly scrolling social media, the statistics are we spend 3 hours a day on social media. Okay. 3 hours a day adds up to over 1,000 hours a year. So that is the equivalent of half of a full-time job. Everyone has the time. They'll tell you that they don't. They'll make every excuse in the book, but Askesis focuses only on, well, what is possible for yourself? Okay. And if you're scared, if what I'm telling you ends up, with a conversation where you're genuinely afraid to make a decision, well, that probably means that decision is potentially good for you. It is natural to be afraid of leaving safety. Like this person, they probably have health insurance benefits, possibly a pension or 401k, fringe benefits outside of the school. But the reality is they're working as a full-time public school teacher and they're making $18.79 an hour when you account for all the extra work that they do and their drive time. That's not acceptable. You can work at Starbucks and make more than $18.79 an hour. So, eventually that person has to weigh, is what I'm doing, that's my mission. I get happiness from this job. That does exist but for a very small portion of the population. And to circle back on that, for me, find a job that you're happy with and you'll never feel like it's work. I've never been happy at a job. As a public school teacher, I was happy at the end of the year when summer came and I got to see all the progress that students made throughout the year. And I felt really good about the work that I did and how I helped improve their life. But the rest of the year, getting there was complete misery. I've never had a job where I was super excited to get up and go to work. So that doesn't exist, and it's this pervasive fantasy that keeps getting pumped into the air. There are people that genuinely enjoy going to work, but it is a very small segment of the population, and it's work is work. You're there to make money, and the only reason that you're trying to make money is so that you don't have to work anymore. Okay, so we want to make as much money as possible in the shortest amount of time, which is why you have to look at every single opportunity. There's an entire page on the Askesis Mindset website dedicated to increasing your alpha. Alpha is what you can perform over and above what everybody else is doing. That's a basic definition. So let's say, everybody makes 50,000 a year. That's the median salary. Okay, alpha would be what could you get over that? How can we get further and further away from the median or the average of what people are making? And the reality is there are people out there hustling all day, every day, absolutely killing it, and you'll never see them. They don't post online about it. They're not worried about looking good or appearing rich. They are literally out there grinding every second of every day, saving their money, and they are, frankly, beating someone mediocre like crazy. They are gaining so much ground on everybody else around them, and they're doing it quietly. That's why we have a problem. I told you the average person spends 3 hours a day on social media. What's on social media? Fakeness. Oh, I made so much money. Oh, I went on vacation. Look at my beautiful family with no problems. Fake. All of it is a mirror, a cosplay, so to speak, of what people want their life to be portrayed as. It's not reality. So the people who are actually grinding and getting it done, they're not posting that. The people that you see on social media the most, constantly posting, constantly telling you about their great life, probably have some of the worst lives That's just the reality of it. You want to follow, frankly, not to be selfish, but people like me that tell you, get off the internet, stop questioning your thoughts, stop telling yourself that you can't do things, and focus on the end result. Sacrifice now, discipline your mind, invest in your future, get to financial freedom. But what I have to say is not exciting. It's not sexy. I'm not going to create a bunch of videos that, lead you into something that isn't healthy for you. But it's all around. Everything is constantly telling you consume, consume, consume. What can you produce? That's what we're asking on the income side. What good or service could you make or provide to people around you that gets you above the median income per hour? Going back to this example, this teachers pay teachers. This person made $75 for 8 hours of work. Forget about stuff like that. Unless it leads to a pathway of, okay, if this is something that they just uploaded and they can forever make recurring revenue on, then it was great. Doesn't take them any time and they could make money on it for however long in the future. No problem. It is okay to invest in things that are going to make you more money later on. But at some point, you have to ask yourself or have a, coming to Jesus moment where you're like, okay, this is not working. This isn't good for me. I'm spending too much time. I'm not making any money. And I'm missing out on X, Y, and Z where I could be gaining that alpha. Okay. Every dollar of income you can make over your expenses is it's profit. It's pure profit if you think of your life as a business. It's $1 that can go into your investments. That $1 is now going to make you money for the rest of your life and start compounding, compounding. And that train is going to start going faster and faster and faster. I hope this income investigator has given you some things to think about. There are a ton of resources on the Askesis Mindset website to get your brain thinking even more. We do have our paid coaching services, but again, I don't push paid coaching on anyone just because I want you to utilize all the free resources before. Our paid services are really for those people who have kind of figured out the spending in the income side and now they're wanting to accelerate. But there are a ton of free resources at your disposal to think about how can you make more money, and you don't have to kill yourself doing it. I know I mentioned you can have two full-time jobs. You could, and I think the highest number of jobs I had at one time was 8. I always had one full-time job and then I had a bunch of side stuff that I was doing. You need time to sleep. You need time to one day a week to breathe, reset, but find where you can efficiently make the most amount of money and then exploit it as much as possible. That's what this income investigator is meant to do. That income per hour does not lie. You can clearly see where your greatest opportunities are. Focus on them. I would question this person if they could start a tutoring business that could then eclipse what they're making. Again, it's a huge leap of faith. But if this person could go from making 40,000 a year to 100,000 a year working for themselves, it's something to be considered. And every person is going to have different opportunities based on their skill set and natural abilities. And there's nothing stopping you from learning something new. Okay, services, I will always hound the trades and services. If you can learn a skill, handyman services, painting, tiling, you name it. If somebody needs it done inside of their house, if you can provide that, services, cleaning, lawn care and maintenance, debris removal, trash services. These are things that exist very close to you that are one door knock away. All you got to do is get out there and hustle, and you could have a business started. I hope this has been helpful and given you some things to think about. Again, this is the beginning of the conversation, not the end. That mind needs to be thinking, and now it is time to take action. So please subscribe to our channel, bookmark our website, and let's continue our journey to financial freedom together. Make it a great day or not. The choice is yours.